Welcome back to America Decides. Thanks for staying with us. We are just hours away from President Trump's decision, which is pending, to place large tariffs on United States trading partners, namely Canada, Mexico, China. Barring an intervention by the president last minute, at midnight tonight, the U.S. will impose 25% tariffs on all imports from Canada and Mexico. Tariffs on goods from China will increase from 10% to 20%. And I want to bring in Kelly O'Grady and Sarah McGregor for reporting and analysis on this. Kelly is a CBS News MoneyWatch correspondent. Sarah, the managing editor for Bloomberg News' national desk. Kelly, let me start with you. So we have this is not a stock market show, but let's put up a graphic about what happened to the Dow today. Down about 650 points. It was at one point almost 1,000 points down. There was tremendous volatility, not just in the Dow, but the other major indexes. The NASDAQ was down 1%. The S&P down 1.76%. Is almost all of that volatility driven by concern over these pending tariffs?
It absolutely was, Major. And in fact, you can look at when President Trump spoke those words that, well, this is actually happening. We are going to see those tariffs placed on Canada and Mexico at midnight. You saw the Dow go like this, the NASDAQ go like this, and the S&P go like this. Now, as you mentioned, we didn't close on session lows, but there's a lot of concern from companies, retailers. If you looked at the auto stocks, Ford, GM, they were all down over 1%, some even 3%. So, yeah, there's a lot of concern. I think a lot of investors were hoping that there was going to be an 11th hour deal. When we got that information that this is indeed going through as of now, it pretty much fell off a cliff.
Sarah, Kelly mentioned autos. I did some checking, and I hope these numbers are correct. In 2023, the United States exported about $65 billion in autos, imported $208 billion, $45 billion of auto imports from Mexico, number one, $35 billion in auto imports from Canada, they're number three. That's a lot of cars coming from those two countries. And if there are 25% tariffs, and we'll get to auto parts in a second, but just on cars, consumers will see that, feel that, and that might materially change the marketplace, right?
Absolutely. I've seen data that car prices are already an average of about $50,000 now with all the new electronics and sort of high-tech cars, the move to EV. So already car prices are pretty high comparably. And I think that is the threat that this could really drive those up further. There's statistics about the number of times that car parts go across the border. This is a really fluid border. Of course, we've had NAFTA, USMCA, now as it's known, in place for decades now. And I think that people are really used to that. And at the same time, Trump really wants to speak to his audience. And when we talk about cars, that's an industry that's near and dear to Americans' hearts. I think they really feel like that represents America, the auto industry that comes from it. So, there's a lot at stake with these tariffs, and the car industry really represents that.
And Kelly, there was an announcement at the White House today about $100 billion of investment. We don't know if it's new. It may have already been planned, but it was announced with some fanfare from TSMC, that's Taiwan Semiconductor. What is the importance of that particular investment?
So TSMC, is almost as important as NVIDIA to the chip industry and sort of the AI race. I think it's important for two reasons. One, President Trump was able to say, hey, I'm putting tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and these other countries, at the same time that he was able to say, look, you have a company coming and manufacturing their products in the United States. I think that was very timely. The other thing is, from a supply chain perspective, from a national security perspective, most of TSMC's chips are made in Taiwan. Having those chips made here, just as the United States is trying to become the leader, continue to be the leader in artificial intelligence, that's a big deal. It's also a big deal. It's going to create a lot of jobs, Major.
And TSMC already has a sizable footprint in Arizona where this investment, and again, we don't know if it's all brand new or an addition to what was already contemplated, will be in Arizona.
That's correct. Yes, it was referenced. Arizona was a big part of the conversation this afternoon.
Sarah, the president also made an announcement over the weekend about a cryptocurrency reserve, and that sparked some applause in the crypto space, but also some blowback in Silicon Valley from those who thought it should all be Bitcoin, or there were other things. Sort of the libertarian part of Silicon Valley was a little bit perturbed about this. There's supposed to be a summit at the end of this week on the future of crypto in America. How do you assess all that?
We've seen unprecedented support for President Trump from the tech industry this time around. Of course, if we just saw who was at his inauguration ceremony, he is getting a lot of support. And we're just talking about TSMC and this massive investment that they're making. That adds to $1 trillion in spending that has been promised since Trump took office. And that's largely companies like Apple, Meta, some of these tech companies. So we can see a real sort of integration right now of Trump's support base, and sort of some of these promises that he's getting made about investment in the US, they are coming from the tech industry. So it's interesting how they're playing into each other, and some of the promises like this crypto promise that Trump's making that may play into some of that relationship that they're having, that tightening of the relationship.
And Sarah, I'll ask you, and then we'll give Kelly a chance also. Kelly talked about, and we highlighted the volatility today, but the volatility has been running through the markets basically for the last couple of months. And there are some analysts I have read who are a little bit concerned about a softening of the job market and a potential rough sledding for the U.S. economy, quite separate from the tariff conversation. What are your thoughts?
Yes, there's already been some indicators that show a bit of a softening in the economy. Of course, we talked about some of those down arrow charts today. The loonie and the peso were also down. The enemy of the markets is uncertainty. And I think this ongoing tariff war is really going to play a part, because we have tariffs that will take effect, as we just talked about, at 12:01 a.m. But then there's going to be retaliation. There's probably going to be an escalation from the Trump administration. And again, that continuation still in aluminum, European tariffs. So straight down the line, we don't know how long these tariffs will be in place for. So the markets and the economy writ large, I think, are, this uncertainty kind of playing into it. It's really hard to see right now how it's going to play out, but there has been a softening.
Kelly, you get the final word.
Well, I think it'll be very interesting to hear President Trump tomorrow night. He has always looked at the markets as a metric for success. And I'll just leave you with this, Major. The Atlanta Fed tracks GDP. What they're estimating for the quarter could always change. But right now, based on that drop in consumer spending we saw last week, it looks like Q1 GDP, first quarter GDP, is on track to be negative. So that will be sort of the context around that address he'll be giving tomorrow.
Kelly O'Grady, Sarah McGregor, thank you very, very much. That was great.